ladies and gentlemen, the judge in Sean P. Diddy Combs' trial is asking for comparison cases before the October 3rd showdown of sentencing. Oh man, this is a good thing for Diddy. Let me tell you why. Let's get into some of the straight game.
Blackjack. Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, StraightGameTV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into it. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, bombshell news, if you will. The judge, unlike what most people are thinking, the judge just asks both sides, the prosecution and the defense, for comparison cases ahead of October 3rd's showdown, if you will, ladies and gentlemen. We got to get into this. And like I said, once again, this is what I was talking about. Like I said, you have sentencing guidelines and things like that, but there's no mandatory minimum here. And the judge, the number one thing that this judge does not want is to be unfair to Diddy in sentencing. And Diddy, like I told you guys the other day, appealed the case based on the fact that there were other cases similar to his, right, in which he was convicted of. We're not talking about what everybody think he should get, not because we thought he was guilty. We're not talking about feelings. We're talking about the law. And so the judge doesn't want to seem too harsh because Diddy will appeal it. 9 times out of 10, they will let him out on appeal and basically say that, they were overly harsh. And most people in cases like this, Diddy's case, would have been granted bail. And so why wouldn't he? So that's why the judge is calling for comparison cases. But more importantly, let's get into some of this straight game, because we got a lot to uncover here, unravel here, ladies and gentlemen. So when you understand what just happened, as I've been telling you guys, people have been speculating on what they think he's going to get and so on and so forth. The judge here is going basically by the law, right? So you got to understand, where facts matter, spin gets sliced, and justice is put under the spotlight, ladies and gentlemen, right? The facts matter, and spin gets sliced, and then the justice is put under the spotlight, right? Like I said, it's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter. And like I said, today's episode, we bring you exclusive breakdown of the latest twist in the legal saga of Sean Diddy Combs, right? So look, the judge's new request for sentencing comparisons, ladies and gentlemen, for sentencing comparisons, not this emotionalism that, all of these other YouTubes been giving you. It's not going to work like that, right? Sentencing comparisons, right? Why October 3rd is locked in as the final sentencing date, right? And how both prosecution and defense are navigating this pivotal moment, right? These are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Plus, what this means for Diddy and his potential time behind bars. You know what I mean? So like I said, let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into it. Check this out. You got to understand what just happened, despite what you've been told. You understand what I'm saying? What just happened, despite all of the rhetoric that you've been told. So federal judge Arun Subramanian, who presided over the Diddy's trial, issued a formal request to both sides of the case. He wants a joint letter by September 1st detailing other federal cases where the defendant was convicted solely of transporting individuals for prostitution and, like Diddy, had no prior criminal record, ladies and gentlemen. Look, you ain't got to listen to me, man. You go on over there and listen to them. I've been telling y'all this. I'm like, look, it's one thing to believe that, and they selling you all of this sensationalism and all of this. Like I said, once again, the judge has asked for a joint letter, ladies and gentlemen, a joint letter by September 1st of case comparisons where the defendant was convicted solely of transporting individuals for prostitution and, like Diddy, had no prior criminal record. I think I'm going to do a video on I'm going to do some research on that and see if I can find some of the cases and what happened with that. But right now we're going to deal with the nuances of this information, right? So you got to understand, and he's not asking for legal arguments, ladies and gentlemen. So he's not asking for no arguments from the defense, Diddy side. He's not asking for no arguments from the prosecution side. He wants data, plain and simple data. He wants the facts because Judge Arun Subramanian knows that if he strays and gets into his feelings or gets into what people are saying in the public, it could be bad for him, and Diddy could possibly appeal this case and, wind up actually getting out of jail. Point blank, period. And he does not want that. He wants to go and follow by the hard data and by the law. The goal in this situation could possibly be to help shape a fair and informed sentence based on precedent, not pressure, not politics or public opinion, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is what I've been trying to explain to most people who don't understand. When you understand that, you remove your feelings from it. You remove your feelings because you're not dealing with the average defendant. You're dealing with somebody who can actually appeal the case and has the money to do so and hire some of the best appellate attorneys in the country to do it. And then, because if this is not dealt with during sentencing, it can be dealt with on appeal. Any lawyer or person understanding the legal process understands that, right? So, and why does it matter? Because even though Combs was acquitted of racketeering and sex trafficking, he was convicted on 2 federal prostitution-related counts. Each of those carries serious prison time, right? We know that, right? And this letter could influence just how much. So the judge is looking for parameters. He's looking for, a place where he can play into, okay, this was that, and this was this. Okay, he might go on the higher side of what he sees and on the lower side of what he sees, right? But yet and still, he's asking for that information, that hard data, which is very important, right? Like I said, that's the charges, the verdict, and the sentence at stake. Despite what the prosecution say they asking for all of this time, and these people talking about the jurors and the witnesses and or the victims and all of this other stuff. It's simply not going to matter. They have to go by the law. You like I said, he can stray from that. He can be like, yeah, I'm gonna give you 10 years for each count, right? That will be quickly appealed. Diddy has no record. You know what I mean? And like I said, the judge is trying to avoid the pressure of politics, public opinion and all of that. So he wants to come in from that perspective, which is a great thing. That's why I say it's looking up for Diddy from that perspective. Like I said, but let's get a closer look at what this really means, right? Diddy went on trial for multiple felony accounts, racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, transport individuals across state lines for prostitution. After 6 weeks of testimony, 34 prosecution witnesses and 0 defense witnesses, the jury returned a split verdict on July 2nd, right? Not guilty on racketeering and trafficking, guilty on 2 prostitution related charges. So now, the stakes are high. Let's not downplay it, by a long shot. The stakes are high. The maximum sentence, 20 years in federal prison. Time already served, roughly around 10 months, if you will, right? The prosecution wants 4 to 5 years minimum. That's what they asking for, right? The defense is pursuing for no more than 2 years, ladies and gentlemen. And so if he would get that time served, that 10 months, the 10 months knocked off on the 2, right? So he's looking at, 14 months, if you will. The question now isn't whether Diddy is going to jail. It's how long he'll stay there and whether the court will treat him like any other first-time offender. That's a big question. Will they treat him like any other first-time offender? Like I said, so far, I would say no. He hasn't been treated like any other first-time offender because after being convicted of the 2 counts involving the prostitution, I felt like he should have got bail. Not because he did it, not because I favor him, but based on the fact that he was a first-time offender. And usually first-time offenders in situations like this get bail, just like the guy involved with the Abercrombie and Finch situation, ladies and gentlemen. Right? They gave him, what, a $10 million, $5 million bail, something like that. He got bail, ladies and gentlemen. So understand that, you know, when you balance it out, you're asking just for fairness, right? So a lot of people, you know, get into their feelings, and it's like, no, you got to understand, based on the law, based on the precedents that's been set. And like I said, the guy from Abercrombie and Finch was arrested, I think, shortly after Diddy, if you will, and or charged shortly after Diddy, and he made bail. For what reason? I don't know, but I'm sure his attorneys argued that, hey, you know, this is just an allegation, Your Honor, and so on and so forth. I think the thing that hurt Diddy the most was that that tape with Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel, to be perfectly honest with you. And even the judge spoke on that when they were trying to get bail after he was found not guilty of the most serious charges, right? Why the judge's request is so important, ladies and gentlemen. Here's where Judge Subramanian's September 1st request, it gets real. This is where it really gets real. He wants examples of comparable federal cases, same charge, no prior convictions. Why? Why does he want that? Because the U.S. Sentencing Commission, a database, doesn't always show the full picture for rare or specific charges like Diddy's, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, because the United States Sentencing Commission database doesn't always show the full picture for rare or specific charges like Diddy has been convicted of, right? So the judge is asking both sides to help him do the research, and they'll each likely highlight cases where the sentence was like the defense and cases where the judge gave years in prison to the prosecution, right? That's what the prosecution is going to show. The defense is going to show light sentences. The prosecution is going to show heavy sentences. Like I said, once again, but like, you know, my thing is, we're talking about first time involving prostitution. I don't know. Like I said, once again, and this is engaging in prostitution. This is not pimping and pandering, if you will. So I don't really know what that would constitute as far as, but like I said, I think I'm gonna do a different video on that one. That's going to set the tone for sentencing briefs, ladies and gentlemen. So this data that he's asking for will set the tone for sentencing briefs, victim impact statements, and potentially even public reaction, right? Because most people are going to be like, you know, they gave him how much for this? And over here, this guy got that. They definitely don't want to be looked at as it was racially motivated as to the reason why they would give Diddy so much time. Like I said, they already pointing out the fact that the guy from Abercrombie and Finch got bail and Diddy didn't. You know, based on what happened with him, and from what I'm understanding, he's not even going to face trial because they're saying he has some kind of Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not, right? So the translation with all of this, right? This is more than legal housekeeping. This is about setting a national precedent. So they're using Diddy to set a national precedent involving this Mann Act and this transportation for the purpose of prostitution situation, if you will. Because this case isn't just about Diddy, it's about celebrity justice, power, and accountability. You know, so like I said, I can understand why the judge would want to do it this way. And like I said, more importantly, try to be as fair or appear to be as fair as possible in this situation, because this case is such a high profile case. If you've seen a video I did about, was it Jack Johnson, Charlie Chaplin, and who else was it? I think Chubby Checker, in regards to when they were basically either threatened or faced the Mann Act charges, and Charlie Chaplin was like one of the only people to ever beat it, if you will, versus his black counterparts, right? October 3rd is the date. And why was it pushed back, right? Originally, the defense wanted an earlier sentencing date, as we know, to get ahead of more public scrutiny, if you will. I think that was one of the reasons why they wanted it, to get ahead of more public scrutiny and all of the stuff that's coming out, people filing these new civil cases and things like that. You know, the hoopla that goes on with that, and people, you know, making these allegations to shorten Diddy's time in limbo also. I mean, to control the post-verdict narrative, if you will, you know, because a lot of people writing, saying stuff, you know, the same thing that we see on certain channels, as well as in the, you know, mainstream media also. But check it out now. But in a rare twist, a joint letter from both the defense and prosecution ended up aligning with the judge's original date of October 3rd. So what changed, right? Because Diddy was trying to get a earlier sentencing date, you know, asking the judge, right? We don't really officially have confirmation, but a lot of people were speculating the defense may have realized a rushed sentence could backfire, right? That's one possibility that they were talking about, or they may be negotiating behind the scenes for a reduced sentence or supervised release. You know what I mean? And that's something that both sides, the defense as well as the prosecution, can get together and say, hey, you know what, Your Honor, we've come to an agreement with Mr. Combs and his attorneys, and we believe that, you know, this would be the best course of action in this situation. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities as to why they didn't come up with the earlier sentencing date, if you will, right? But regardless, right, the hearing is scheduled. You know, at the hearing, they scheduled to argue for early sentencing was abruptly adjourned, right? Remember that. So now the legal clock is ticking, and the countdown to October 3rd is official. So we're going to basically see, as we slide up on it, October 3rd will be here no time. October, November, December, January, February. You know, my thing is this. And you got this Tupac murder trial coming up too. That's in February of 2026. You know, will Diddy be incarcerated or will he be home before that trial starts? You feel me? I don't think, you know, I've heard a lot of people talk about, I don't think that they're going to try to involve Diddy. I could be wrong in the Tupac case. Like I said, based on the lawyering and the legal team that he had, I don't think that they could even try to even halfway get no kind of conviction or anything like that. I did videos about that also. So, but more importantly, there is evidence that they're going to use statements that Keefe D made that have Diddy name in it. And like I said, you know, once again, it just like Diddy say, well, you know, it just can't stop, won't stop. You know what I mean? They say when it rains, it pours, right? So, you know, the biggest question is now, will Diddy get probation or prison? Here's what the legal community is buzzing all about. You know, like I said, they buzzing about this. You know, Diddy was acquitted of the heaviest charges, but convicted on serious felony crimes tied to exploitation. So could he walk with probation? Experts say unlikely. What I was telling you guys yesterday. Unlikely that Diddy will be able to walk, right? And like some of the reasons why. The charges still involve transportating individuals for sexual purposes, a federal offense that judges rarely treat lightly. The lack of remorse, no cooperation, and celebrity profile could all work against leniency, ladies and gentlemen. And the pre-sentencing report likely includes damaging victims' statements, even if those victims weren't part of the final charges, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said once again. And so that's why most people are arguing that he won't get probation. Once again, the judge is now looking for the data. What the experts say, like I said, the experts were wrong about the RICO, right? So what the experts say It's just their opinion. It's just their opinion. I don't think you can relate this to any other situation where somebody was transporting somebody across state lines for prostitution, as these women were in a relationship with Diddy from that perspective. Not only by what we are assuming that they were in a relationship, they said they were in a relationship. You see what I'm saying? It's not, this situation is unlike any other situation I would believe that we've probably ever seen before. I think that's why the judge is asking for the data also. Plus, there's pressure on the court to show this isn't a case of a billionaire buying his way out. That's the sad part. And that shouldn't matter. Like the judge said, that's another reason why he's asking for the data, right? About cases similar to Diddy's, first time conviction, no priors. What is the sentencing and some of the sentences that were handed down if they can give that data, right? So while the defense is asking for 2 years, the reality could land somewhere between 3 to 5 years with credit for time served. But again, it all depends on the judge's final review, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, we're going to see what happens involving that. And will it go in Diddy's favor or will it go in not Diddy's favor? We don't know. But like I said, that's why the judge is doing what he. So anything else that we've been hearing, all of this rhetoric and crazy talk, like I said, it really doesn't matter. Once again, Diddy still has a ace up his sleeve, and the ace is in an appeal. And the judge is cognizant of that. Most people not thinking about that part. Diddy can, once he gets sentenced, he can appeal it. If it's too harsh, then they feel like it's too harsh. And so that's why he wants the data. He wants the data so the judge doesn't, go too far over, and he can seem like, okay, cool. He's going to be fair. Boom. That's it. Done deal. Diddy goes to jail, goes to Butner or one of those, the camps or something like that. And then does his time and then comes home. A convicted felon now, though, right? From that perspective, right? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, I was telling you, this is why you can't trust Tisa Tells on this. This is why I was trying to tell you guys that you cannot. You heard what the judge just asked for. Tisa Tells was telling you about Diddy trying to escape, and he had an escape plan and all of this other stuff. All of that's lies. All of that is clickbait. All of that is to try to get you to click on the channel to hear a bunch of nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. What I just gave you was nothing but 100% facts. 100% facts. And some opinions of experts who basically say why they think Diddy is not likely to get probation from that perspective. Nothing that my opinion on what no lie. We don't need to do that. We don't need to lie to kick it. This is why you can't trust Tisa Tells on this, right? A quick reality check. A lot of YouTubers are jumping in with the hot takes, especially Tisa Tells. But here's what she admitted on record. She hasn't read the pre-sentencing report, so she doesn't know. It's just talk. It's just a take. It's just perspective, right? Okay, everybody has it, but then when one starts to speak as if it's fact, once again, then it turns into a lie, right? Number 2, she hasn't interviewed legal experts. It's plain and simple. She has not interviewed any legal experts at all. It's living room leisure talk, if you will. And it does not equal to facts, ladies and gentlemen. And number 3, she hasn't spoken with any of the victims in this case. That's the reason why I say you can't trust anything that Tisa Tells says. Yet she's confidently telling her audience that Diddy will get a slap on the wrist. She doesn't know that. She doesn't know anything. None of us do. That's why the judge is now asking for the hard data, because he really don't know either. And what he doesn't want to do is overreach his hand so Diddy can appeal this. And like I said, and then come home on an appeal, waiting until the appeal is settled. it's very possible, ladies and gentlemen, if the judge gives him a harsher sentence than has been given out before with somebody dealing with the same situation as him. That celebrity stuff, all of that stuff, that shouldn't matter. That doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen. It should not matter. You know what I mean? What his status was, how much money he made. We're talking, he's just like every other defendant. The only difference is that he got money and he has been successful. That's how I would want to be looked at under no circumstances. Whether if you're in a situation like that, don't look at me because I like what is the guideline, what is the data, what usually how much time or situation that's given out for somebody who did the same thing as me. That's how you apply the law effectively and fairly, ladies and gentlemen, right? But Tisa Tells is out here confidently telling her audience that Diddy will get a slap on the wrist. She doesn't know that, right? And then she says, oh, he could get 20 years. He gonna get 20 years, right? Listen, ladies and gentlemen, that's not reporting. That's reckless commentary. And people, I see people like, why don't you leave Tisa Tells? I'm not messing with Tisa Tells. I'm talking about the facts versus the lies. If you're uncomfortable with that, you don't have to watch my channel, ladies and gentlemen. If you're uncomfortable with the facts, you don't have to watch my channel. I prefer you not to watch my channel. Like I said, I'm not begging nobody for nothing. We over here just giving you the straight up facts. This straight game. If you don't like the straight game, then you can hang out with Tisa Tells and everybody else who you feel like you want to listen to. But don't come over here telling us or suggesting what you think we should be doing. You know what I mean? We don't live in that world. So, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't the time for clickbait. This is the time for facts. This is the time for understanding, right? This is the time for information to be provided to the public if you're going to do this, right? Just from a non-biased standpoint. Just as simple as that, right? This isn't the time for fact. This is the time basically for fact-based coverage, if you will. Just straight up facts, right? This is the time for fact-based coverage because victims, right, fans, and the legal system all deserve better. If you're going to do this, then do it right. The doom and the gloom, it's like, yeah. And then you click on that video and they said a whole bunch of nothing, right? It was a waste of your time. You're not going to get that time back, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, this is where the truth is. And like I said, you got other YouTubers out here giving you real honest commentary based on the facts, not based on their feelings and based on, and some people you got that are pro Diddy. Like I said, that's their business. I'm not pro Diddy or anti Diddy, right? I'm not. I'm just giving you what it is. Like I said, the judge is looking at, he needs the hard data. You know what I mean? I think the judge he understands what it is. And for the people who understand the power of the dollar and being able to appeal a case and all of those things, it like I said, once again, the appeal court judges don't look at it like the trial judges do. The appeal court judges usually try to follow the law and the precedent that has been set. That's why the judge is asking for that information. He knows that too, right? So here's the timeline moving forward. September 1st, right? Both sides must submit joint case comparison letters, right? September 22nd, final sentencing submissions are due, right? And October 3rd, Diddy's official sentencing in federal court. And between now and then, you can expect, right? Civil suits to ramp up, new testimony to emerge, and more creators trying to control the narrative, right? But that's not what we're doing over here. We're not trying to control the narrative. We're just trying to give you, the straight information, unbiased, just like it is, because it doesn't matter one way or another whether you believe what I say or not. Like I said, I'm just giving you straight game. Point blank period, right? So, but here, right, on StraightGameTV, we stay grounded, y'all. We're going to stay grounded with this. We're going to stand, like I said, we're going to stand 10 toes down and 2 feet deep, ladies and gentlemen. 10 toes down and 2 feet deep. Because when the noise fades and the courtroom doors close, only one voice matters. And that's the judge's gavel. Not mine, not nobody else. Like I said, when the noise fades and the courtroom door closes, only one voice matters. And that's that judge's gavel. When he slaps it on the thing, court is adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. We're done with this matter. So like I said, once again, I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for tuning in. Your boy Delray, StraightGameTV.
Life is like the cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother